not going to build a multi-million-dollar business. I'm going to build a business or a couple of businesses that sustain me. And my win is to be around my kids, not missing anything.
Meet Christian Ray Flores, refugee turned entrepreneur, global leader, and high-performance coach. From raising millions for impactful causes to empowering leaders through his Exponential coaching program, Christian's journey is a masterclass in resilience, vision, and making a difference.
Have you seen any sort of a theme or trend of those that accomplish big things have had to endure a lot of challenges and adversity in life?
Most of them, yes. Most of them have almost this rocket fuel capacity. I basically switched 4 countries and 3 continents by age 7. It sort of shaped me as very multicultural. It gave me a lot of actually really good abilities to adapt, to learn. I learned 4 languages by age 9. There's a scary stat I saw somewhere, and I think it's really statistically probably true. From the time your kids leave home, they leave their house, they're adult, they marry, they have children, they have a life, they have a career. From the time they leave home until the time you die, cumulatively, you would spend with them 1 year. That is a scary thought to me, you know?
How is it going, ladies and gentlemen? This is Sean Barnes. I want to welcome you back to The Way of the Wolf. We have a very special guest today, and that is Christian Ray Flores. He is the founder of Exponential Life, focusing on high-performance coaching with purpose-driven professionals. Now, the thing that I find fascinating is Christian's story about being a refugee in Chile into an international pop star, and now focusing on helping executives build their personal brand. And I think the story there is just absolutely incredible and not traditional from anything that I've seen so far. So Christian, welcome to The Way of the Wolf.
Sean, first of all, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for that's a sexy title for a podcast, The Way of the Wolf. I must say, it's fantastic.
I really appreciate it. Fun fact, I just this week got all of the trademark paperwork finalized for the logo and the podcast. Haven't actually publicly announced that to anybody until now because for obvious reasons, it's a multi-year process and wanted to wait on it. But I am super pumped and really appreciate that feedback.
That's awesome. It's a great brand. I love it.
Thank you. All right, so tell me a little bit about, before we get into what you do now, I am dying to hear your story about being a refugee into a pop superstar. Tell us a little bit about that journey, because I cannot even imagine how challenging that might have been for you.
Yeah, you're right, and it's a very strange story. It's almost like a Forrest Gump situation, you know. You find yourself in these just extreme situations, and then the extreme opposite, back and forth and back and forth. The way it started is that my mom and dad, they're to blame for all of it, right? Because this was during the Cold War. My mom is Russian, my dad is Chilean, and they met in college, and they're both Marxist, and I ended up being like incredibly intensely anti-communist as a result of the whole sort of thing. But they basically moved to Chile. They met in college in Russia. They moved to Chile, and because of their views, there was a military coup, and my dad ended up in a concentration camp. A bunch of people got tortured, killed, disappeared. It was just intense, right? And we ended up in a refugee facility, a UN refugee facility that sort of sent us traveling around the world. And I basically switched 4 countries and 3 continents by age 7. We ended up in Africa. My dad had a contract there, so I grew up in Africa. And it sort of shaped me as sort of very multicultural. It gave me a lot of actually really good abilities of a sort of anti-fragility. That's the term that I like to use. This ability to adapt, to learn. I learned 4 languages by age 9. And then we ended up moving back to Russia, and it was the Cold War and the Soviet Union. It was just super miserable. And I witnessed the fall of the whole thing, of the Soviet Union. And as I was getting ready to sort of adult, I had a master's degree in economics, and all of my friends were were zigging to going to banking and international trade, and I zagged the other direction because I was musical. And I was like, I'm gonna give it a try. I'm in my 20s. This is a free market situation. Let me just try. And basically, by the end of the year, I was on national television, and I went from playing small clubs, small venues, to bigger venues, to sports arenas, to having this massive fame across 15 different countries. And at the end of the day, even campaigning against the communists because Boris Yeltsin used my song as the anthem for his election campaign. So it was just a very strange trajectory for life, but it shaped me into who I am today, and I'm really grateful for it.
Okay, hold on. Time out. All of that in a year?
From zero to national television in a year, from that to sports arenas and campaigning for Yeltsin, another 2 years.
God, that is phenomenal. Yeah. You must have a beautiful voice. I mean, you sound great on this mic, but I mean, I can't even imagine.
Well, I danced, I could dance. Russians can't dance.
Yeah, white guys can't dance either. So
you know what I'm saying? So, I looked exotic. I danced. I had a voice. I wrote my own songs. I choreographed. So I had sort of a few things that going for me that helped me stand out from the crowd.
Oh, man. Okay. That is absolutely incredible. So tell me a little bit more about what happened next.
I basically, and this is actually might speak to some people in your audience, right? You can find yourself being very grateful for your success in whatever shape that takes in your life, but then also becoming almost like a prisoner of that success. Because you start realizing that you want more things, different things, and it becomes very difficult to change lanes because now you have sort of the status, right? And to be a beginner, be an amateur, be an experimenter now comes at a cost of shifting away from that. And I just found myself in that situation where I literally remember the moment I was on this train with my crew going on tour, multi-city tour, and I'm sitting there and I like surprise myself with this really, when there's a pronounced life-changing thought you may have and you go, oh, this is a problem. I was looking out the window and I'm like, is this all there is for me? That was the thought. That was exactly the thought. And it was this deep sense of dissatisfaction, right? From one side of one angle, you go, I'm living the dream, man. It's like what percentage of musicians end up having this kind of impact even? You go from city to city, the songs that you wrote in your kitchen, in the subway, tens of thousands of people are singing them back to you. I mean, what an honor, what a privilege, I'm such a lucky guy. And at the same time, I caught myself going, yeah, but, they're musicians, that's all they want to do. And somehow in this line of work, there's whole pieces of me, whole dimensions of me that are dormant. They're just not there, And I was like, this is just not enough for me, actually, And I feel guilty because, now I have people depending on me for their livelihood. I have a whole team. But then I start going, okay, if I do this at this level of success for the next 20 years, will I be happy? And the answer was no. Because I had an education, I speak 4 different languages. I was sort of an international guy just by the nature of my sort of growing up. And I just didn't want to be confined to that area of the world. I didn't want to be confined to just music. I just had other things that are beyond that. And that sort of started my transition out of it. Slowly, I went back home, told my team, hey, I want to start transitioning out. Everybody thought I was crazy, and for obvious reasons, right? I was a little crazy, to be honest with you, right? I'm an idealistic guy. Once I understand that sort of a deep truth about myself, I start moving in that direction.
Your story is, well, one, fascinating, but also it resonated with me beyond belief. And while I've had a very different life trajectory, my background was in information technology. And in my mid-30s, I had spent 2 decades in IT and was really good at what I did, was a VP of IT for a publicly traded oil and gas company. I had a similar feeling, like, is this all there is? And some people are like, are you kidding me? You're a VP at a big oil and gas company? Like, what do you mean, is this all there is? And it was just, and I couldn't even really articulate where my head was at and why I felt that way, and ultimately recognized that I wanted some sort of a challenge, and stepped in and also started leading human resources. And it just changed the entire trajectory of my life. And now I find that my passion and purpose is building people and teams and cultures of performance. And it's interesting that we see some individuals, and I'm going to focus on men for the purposes of this conversation, but it would seem that there are a number of men out there that they reach a certain point, like this inflection point in their life, and they think, is this all there is? And so I commend you on being able to have that very difficult conversation with your crew and team and everybody that's depending on you, saying, I know we've got all this good stuff going on and we're all in the media and doing big things, but I think I want to kind of pivot a little bit, because that in and of itself takes a tremendous amount of courage. So how old were you when all of this transpired?
I think I was around 20, I want to say 28, somewhere around that.
Okay. All right. So I didn't really anticipate going down this direction, but it does beg the question. One of the things that I have started to pick up on in life as I have more people come on the show and interact with just numerous people in recent years, it would seem that a lot of the people that accomplish big things in life have had to encounter some form of adversity in life. And clearly you had a substantial amount of adversity early on in life that probably forced you to grow up very quickly. And so I'm curious, have you encountered that as well? With all of the people that you work with now, have you seen any sort of a theme or trend of those that accomplish big things have had to endure a lot of challenges and adversity in life?
I think most of them, yes. Most of them, yes. Most of them have almost like this rocket fuel capacity. And it's almost always. I mean, I can think of maybe one or two exceptions rooted in some sort of significant adversity. It's just really remarkable. And if you start understanding that, you can learn how to turn adversity into fuel on and over and over and over again. I think most people just do it and they don't know where it comes from necessarily. And they don't have sort of this metacognition to be able to go, oh, I can turn this into a thing over and over again. But yes, I think so too. And I think the other phenomenon that I encounter is exactly what happened to me, actually, is that around your first sort of big success, and it could be somewhere between your early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, depending on how quickly you got to this place of mastery, of status, of respect, etc., and maybe between that and 40, the things that you didn't pay attention and you didn't improve on earlier start catching up with you, and then you have a new round of adversity around that time. That's what I notice, right? And I mean, that's why you and I coach people. It's basic. No one ever. I had this conversation with someone yesterday who just came on board, and I was just trying to encourage this guy, right? And I'm like, dude, I wish I could say that most of the people that come to me for coaching come because they've reached this incredible peak and they want to reach a higher peak. The honest answer is most people come limping. They do. And you should be encouraged because it's okay. The things that we don't figure out in our 20s catch up with us in our 30s. The things we don't figure out in our 30s catch up with us in our 40s. And what you should think about, you should be proud of yourself that you decided to figure those things out. Because if you don't, it's going to keep haunting you over and over again, right?
You know, that's such an important point. And I think that the successes that I had achieved up to my mid 30s in life, to your point, I didn't truly comprehend and understand what the fuel was, what the drivers were. I just, up to that point in my life, thought, oh, well, I'm driven. I'm just determined. I'm going to accomplish big things. And it wasn't admittedly until my late 30s, I'd been leading IT and HR for a number of years at that point in time, that I started to ask the bigger question of why? Why am I like this? And as I started to explore that, came to realize there's a lot of stuff from my childhood that I had kind of just like buried away in the back corner of my psyche. And once I started to actually unpack that, which wasn't a fun experience and took me a while to kind of process through, I was able to start to better understand and use that as fuel. To use your terminology and phrasing. I like to kind of think of it as just this fire inside of us. And when you understand how to harness that power and then channel it in one direction, like, man, you become just an unstoppable force. But it seems that there's a lot of people that don't take the time to ask the bigger question, why am I driven? How do I channel that? How do I make the most of that? And so I'd like to kind of pivot the conversation a little bit into that realm, because I think that's going to be a beautiful segue into more of what you do.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I think, I would say, yes, we're all, people that are driven have fuel, clearly. They just have a different quantity, perhaps, of fuel, right? And what happens, what you're describing is this purification, going from bad fuel to good fuel. You already have the fuel. And the downside of having a lot of fuel is that it drives you forward real fast. But it also brings the bad with it, So, you're very driven, but part of your drive comes from the wrong place, right? So, sort of, maturity is purifying your fuel and turning it into this pure rocket fuel that brings more good than bad results. And I mean, it's just, I see it everywhere, it's literally everywhere. And I'll give you an example. For example, with my first success in my music career, my fuel was fitting in and being loved. That's my fuel. And a lot of it was, in other parts of my fuel is creativity and music and impact and ideas and joy. All of those were good things, right? So that infused my music with something that translated into millions and millions of people liking it. But the bad part of the fuel brought some side effects, some downsides. And that comes from, hey, if you grow up moving from country to country, from language to language, from body language, cultural acceptable things and not acceptable things over and over again, and you end up being an outsider everywhere you've gone, which I have been my whole life, you develop the ability to read people, to learn people, to fit in. But the deeper desire, that darker sort of side of you where you go, maybe I don't fit in. And maybe I'll do this one thing to assure people will love me and accept me. That's the bad fuel. So the downside of that, and I can give you a description even on the music side, and I think you can translate into the corporate side very easily, is that, hey, I can create great music choreography, I have a discipline, I have a work ethic that will really stands out. But because of this fear, this ungenerous, will I fit in? Can I guarantee an outcome? Can I control the outcome? Piece of it, that translates into too much ego, not enough collaboration, not enough sort of this generous stance about how I go about my music and about my business and show business. So I look back and I go, oh my gosh, I could have made so many more allies on the business side of show business. I could have created all kinds of duets, collaborations with other musicians if I didn't think of them as competitors, but thought of them as colleagues and admired them and said, hey, let's do something together, you know? But I had so much ego, and ego is always insecurity. It's always rooted in fear, right? That I didn't create all kinds of partnerships that could have been created. I didn't create music with brilliant people that I loved and admired. I just didn't have the confidence to say, I admire you. Can we do something together? You know?
Man, everything that you just said is so extremely powerful. And there's a few things that come to mind. And I want to kind of stay on this rocket fuel theme. And I don't know how familiar you are with like space travel and technology. Obviously, we all know NASA and SpaceX and things like that. And as you were talking through that, I started to kind of flash over to the advancements or evolution of technology in space travel. So if you think of when the shuttles were in place, you had the rocket boosters and then the Saturn rockets and things like that. And it was just like you had access to hundreds and thousands and millions of pounds of thrust from these rockets. And it was just off, launch. And that's it. You get 100% thrust, and then once you're done, you're in space, bam. Well, one of the things as we look through what SpaceX has done with their reusable rocket technology is these thrusters, the Raptor engines, they have the ability to turn on and off and vary the amount of thrust that they are exerting. So this rocket fuel and rocket theme technology aligns with kind of the evolution of space travel and how it used to just be all or nothing. And seemingly early in your career, you were just full speed ahead, creating all this songs and music and doing everything. And as you have evolved, you have learned how to harness this fuel and be able to turn it off and on and vary your thrust ratios and everything that you're doing to achieve more of an optimal and efficient outcome. So like everything that you were saying made my mind go there. Does all that resonate with you, or does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does, absolutely, because you're basically almost like riding. I think your analogy is perfect, right? You know, your ambition, your drive just gets you someplace, and you've learned to do that and like it because the world will give you money, respect, promotions, roles, you know, all of that, career opportunities. So those things get rewarded. So you just ride that rocket. Well, what you don't realize, because you're mostly just enjoying the ride, is that you're leaving all kinds of opportunities on the table. You know, you can amplify your impact. You can increase your ability to do things 10x, actually. But because you're going forward, you just don't notice what you're missing. And what you're missing is control, nuance, generosity, the capital, the thrust that comes from collaboration, from community, from humility, from receiving guidance from peers, from giving to other people just with not receiving anything in return. You also ignore a lot of the time with professionals. You ignore your family and your friends over your career, and those are massive, massive foundational things for you to succeed long term, right? So you're actually you're not really high performance. You're just moving fast, you know, if you think about it, right? Until you can't anymore, it catches up with you, right?
Yeah, it really does. And it's so fascinating because by most people's standards, the successes that I had achieved in corporate America, and it was just a ride on a rocket. Now, that rocket ride was over a decade. I mean, it was 2 decades. But whenever I think about kind of where I ended in terms of my corporate career and my level of compensation and where I was at, and then stepping in over the last year of starting my own company, I basically had to turn off the thrusters and start over. And that is something that I think will have a massive blow to a lot of people's ego and will prevent them from accomplishing what they are truly capable of accomplishing, because that rocket ride at 100% thrust is addicting as can be. When the money's coming in and all of the attention and power and everything that comes, it can be very addicting. But I think certain people get to a point where they're like, okay, fun, addicting, all of those things. Yes, but maybe not quite so fulfilling. And that's a tough pill to swallow.
Also, I think you can get short-term gains, and at a certain point you realize your long-term game is going to suffer tremendously if you don't recalibrate, right? And yeah, you can ride the rocket and you can hit a wall at that speed, or you can sort of slow it down and recalibrate, and do it better. Just do it better. So I love helping people with both short-term high performance, but I would say what I love more, because that's actually relatively easy. It's long-term, sustained, exponential growth.
Okay, I really want to dig into this a little bit, because you said something that is very important for everybody that's watching and listening to this, is to achieve those short-term results, it's relatively easy. Now, when I look back on my life, I can absolutely agree and think, yeah, it takes a ton of work, crazy hours, and it is stressful, but in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty easy. And in this world that we currently operate in of instant gratification, the bar has never been lower in terms of the amount of work that you have to do to accomplish great things. But everybody is distracted by everything. I mean, this is constantly buzzing in our pockets. Everything's trying to get our attention all the time. If you can stay laser focused on one thing for some sort of a sustained period of time, you can just crush it in life. But that is not always the best long-term and most sustainable path, and definitely not the most fulfilling. When you shift gears into what you and I are talking about, I think that's when the real challenging journey starts to unfold. So tell me a little bit about the people that you're working with. You said that you appreciate working with people that are striving to achieve those short-term results, but you seemingly enjoy more the people that are looking to kind of pivot and shift into kind of some sort of greater purpose and fulfillment. Two questions. One, how do you determine where your customers are at whenever you start having these conversations? And then at what point do you start to kind of shift the conversation to ensure that you are guiding them in a way to achieve what they're looking for?
Well, I just try to make a projection. Okay, if you're going in this direction, okay, here's what I heard from you. Boom, 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 boom. How do you think that's going to affect your life in 10 years? 5 to 10. Does that correspond with your ideal week, your ideal day that you have in your mind? Because everybody has it, right? Like, this is how I would love to do this. This is how I'd like to spend my money, my time, my energy, my creative energy. And everybody has that picture. And I ask them about the ideal day actually quite regularly. And I go, okay, what's your ideal day? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so doing what you're doing right now, are you going to see that ideal day, in the mid to short to long term, let's say 3 to 5 years? And I think when people realize, no, actually, that's when I start talking about it, because I go, okay, so I think your pain point is this, and we can address that pain point. Because it could be anxiety, lack of direction, lack of clarity. I want to figure out where to go. I want to stop being anxious all the time. I want to, save my marriage, that sort of thing, right? This is pain point. This is reactive thinking, which is fine, right? You do want to remove the pain points, but you want to remove the pain points and you want to build something that won't have those pain points return, ever. So I sort of redirect that way, and then we strategize about what that looks like.
It's crazy how powerful asking the right questions can be. That one little question that you asked, like whenever you asked it, I was thinking, oh, well, damn, yep, that is a powerful question that most people, when they're on that rocket ship full speed ahead, they think, I don't even have time to think about these types of things until someone like yourself steps into the conversation and prompts them to think about that one thing.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. For example, when I moved from Eastern Europe to the States, I was 35 years old, yeah. And we had all of our children over there. So they're now, I have 3 daughters. They're little. You know, I have like a preteen and two little ones. And, you know, I realized that I'm going to spend, if I'm driven enough to build something extraordinary, but I only have them for 18 years. And the question is, what are the must-haves? You know, and I ask people that all the time, because I'm like, you know, what my must-have is, I don't want my children to ever experience the divorce that I experienced in my parents' lives, the agony of not having both parents present, nurturing them, guiding them. I don't want my kids to ever say, you were not there. You're building your life, and you can rationalize that you're providing for me and you're providing a new future and you're doing it all for me. But all I didn't want your presence. I want your presence. And I sort of knew that, I think, based on my own pain of not having my dad around from the age of 14 and on. And I basically said, look, strategically, long term, I'm actually not going to build something. I'm not going to build a multi-million-dollar business. I'm going to build a business or a couple of businesses that sustain me. And my win is to be around my kids, not missing anything, not one thing. And when they're out of the house, I'm going to gear up again, and I'm going to build something bigger because I have the bandwidth to do so. But I'll never regret not being there. And they will never be able to say, you were not there for a performance, for a graduation. And I haven't missed one thing in their lives. They're all out of the house now. And they just love and respect us and treasure the family. And they come home, and it's this just incredibly powerful base that I have, right, in my family, where I can build great things because I have this emotional, loving family that supports me. And I don't have those regrets that are crippling to so many people that are high achievers. So that's the thing, right? That's a long-term, sustain an extraordinary life move. And it always comes at a price. And the question is, do you want that? Is this non-negotiable for you? And the second is, are you willing to pay the price? You know, I come from 3 generations of broken homes, all divorces, right? And I decided that's not gonna happen. It stops with me. I don't want it for me. I don't want it for my children. I just celebrated, a month ago, 25 years of marriage. Excellent marriage. That is a non-negotiable for me, and it comes at a cost, okay? And I'm totally fine paying the cost. And that doesn't change me from it doesn't make me a non-high performer. It just makes me a more holistically high performer person.
You know, I appreciate where your head is at in terms of everything having a price and a cost. And, you know, I see this a lot, especially in corporate America, where people want the high-paying job, and then they get into it and realize, oh, I don't get to see my family. I'm on the road all the time. And they don't really understand the true cost of making that kind of money until they're there and experiencing it. And the reality is, there's a lot of people out there that they want all of the money, but they also want all of the family time. And unfortunately, while sometimes you can build something to make that happen, there is always a cost. And the cost, to your point, can be, I want to spend time building my family. In order to do that, I have to allocate time, money, and energy and resources over here. at the expense of what I could potentially build on the business side of things, and income and earnings and all of those things. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that just go all in on building a business or multiple businesses, and that becomes their entire life. And the price is they don't get as much time to spend with their family. And I think there's far too many people that don't really understand the price is the price. You're going to pay for it one way or the other. You don't get the luxury of getting everything. You can have everything you want in life, just not at the same time.
Yeah. And the one thing that's not scalable is time. Money is scalable. Business is scalable. You can always scale your business. You can always make more money. You cannot get that time back. You will not. You know, there's a scary stat I saw somewhere, and I think it's really statistically probably true, with maybe some minor nuance, is that from the time your kids leave home, if they're sort of not the kids that will live in your basement for the rest of their lives, which is a different set of problems, right? But they leave their house, they adult, they marry, they have children, they have a life, they have a career. From the time they leave home until the time you die, cumulatively, you would spend with them 1 year for the rest of your life. That is a scary thought to me, you know? And to me, that makes it non-negotiable. I'm like, I can use my talents, my organizational skills to buy time, so I can buy freedom, to buy the freedom to be around my family, be around my wife, be around my friends, and not regret any of it. I will use my talents towards that, and I can make a good living. I'm not going to be the next billionaire. I'm not going to be on the Fortune whatever magazine cover. I do not care about that, you know. And I can always scale that up eventually when the kids are out of the house, you know. But I can look at that at any moment at that time of the children growing up in the house, and I can give you countless examples of just treasures of experience, of very mundane and beautiful treasures, but also extraordinary because we traveled the world. We took them all over the world. We invested in the way they are enriched culturally, experientially. And now I'm looking at them in college or out of college, and they're just crushing it. Well, they're crushing it because they had that foundation from us. That's my treasure. That's my investment. That's what my drive, that's the high achievement that I want for me. Now, if you choose something else, totally fine, as long as you understand the cost, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I want to kind of start to shift gears a little bit into the personal branding side of things. But to your point, I mean, ultimately, the cost has to be paid at some point. And it's important for all of us, I think, to figure out where do you want to be in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, and then being intentional about moving in that direction and learning how to vary the thrust on your rockets and pivot and adjust and tweak and course correct to make sure that you end up ultimately where you're wanting to go.
And I'd just add one more thing, is that high performance short term actually counts for very little if you can't sustain that for life. You know? And if you don't invest in holistic high performance all around, you actually won't be high performing very long. That's just the bottom line, you know? So just consider that, right?
So let's talk a little bit about personal brand. This is something that admittedly I've only become increasingly aware of over the last probably year or two, if I'm being honest, because before that I was still very introverted. When you look at my online presence, there's been kind of an explosion over the last 2 years. But before that, I was more of a lurker. I didn't really do much. And I've started to understand the power of building my online presence. And it is also, I think, very important to ensure that your online presence matches your in-person presence, so that when people do meet you face to face, it doesn't, break their brain and think, wait a second, hold on, what's going on here? But there are just countless examples of people that I come across, that I work with. And the first thing I do, I pull up their online presence, whether it's LinkedIn, usually is kind of where I spend most of my time and energy. But you look at their online presence, and all of a sudden, you start drawing some associations, the types of photos that they're in, the types of activities that they're doing. And immediately, I can determine, is this someone that I want to be associated with? Because they are building this personal brand, whether they realize it or not. And it's only until people start to become intentional about how they are curating their presence that I think they start to really move the needle in a meaningful way so that they can start surrounding themselves with excellence. And I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful concept, honestly. And I'll start with this. There's never been a better time to build a personal brand, because there's never been a better time that you can reach, communicate, serve anyone, anywhere, at any time, and deliver goods and services and products, et cetera, right? So it's just, we'll live at a wonderful time for that, wonderful, really wonderful time. So like ignoring that, at least not understanding what that means, et cetera, and poking around and, taking it out for a spin, I think it would be it would be a mistake not to do it, not to at least consider it. So the idea of personal branding is very simple. It's your reputation at scale. That's what it is. And obviously the intentional personal branding is your ability to communicate authentically, very clearly, very sincerely, and succinctly to where people can know you and trust you personally. That is personal branding. That's pretty much it. Now, there's like endless avenues for that, right? But it's basically digging deep into who you are, having incredible insights that are unique to you, and then communicating that to the world. And it could be a book, it could be a podcast. This is what you're doing is personal branding. What I'm doing is personal branding right now in this moment, right? And it's you can have a newsletter, you can have all kinds of ways to do it, but it's basically scaling your passion, the solutions that you offer. What problem do you solve, and how do you solve it? What's unique about your solution? That's it. It's very simple. And I think most people don't do it, mostly because they don't believe they have anything of value to offer that is distinct. So most people don't do it. They have rationalizations why they don't do it. But the truth at the very core is that we do not believe we're extraordinary enough to offer something distinct. And the fear is rejection and ridicule. That's the core fear, right? You can rationalize it all kinds of ways, but the core, the nucleus of the whole thing is fear of ridicule, rejection, and all of that stuff, right? That's it. That's pretty much it. And to me, I sort of experienced that first when I was in my early 20s. I was so lucky, I guess, right? Because you realize that, oh my gosh, you're writing these songs. You don't even know if people are going to like it. Are they good enough? Who knows, right? And you put it out there, and then it sort of catches fire. And it's at scale. Like one person doing one thing, singing, writing songs, releasing albums, music videos, and it's all of a sudden millions of people are paying attention. The value of doing something in old little you, right? Doing something that is so valuable that millions of people respond. It's incredible. And the benefits are remarkable because you can be essentially at the same time in multiple places and add that value everywhere through people listening to your music, reading your book, for example, watching your podcast. That's reputation at scale. That's delivered value over and over and over again. And for me, it was just remarkable. And the contrast, I'll offer you an extreme contrast, but I think we can translate into the modern American reality, right? So when I was in high school in the Soviet Union, there's zero upward mobility, okay? Zero. The country is shut off. There's censorship. There's no access to Western anything. There's no entrepreneurship is illegal, actually. Like you can't start a business. There's just no opportunity, right? Of course, I grew up all over the world. I'm there. I'm like bored out of my mind in high school. Everything that they do is lame, and I would draw these logos in my notebook, trying to not paying attention to the teacher at all. He was trying to teach me something valuable, probably, and I would draw like Coca-Cola and Adidas, and I would draw like band names of people that I admired, like Michael Jackson or Kiss, and I wanted to. These are bands that I would never see live. I knew that, but my mind went there, right? And just putting yourself out there in small little steps. When the whole thing sort of fell apart and it was chaos, and I'm like, I'm going to do music. All my friends are doing banking. They're all making actually a lot of money, But I just have this passion. I think I have something to offer that's a lot of people will like. So remember how I was writing these logos of Adidas? Literally, it's probably 5-6 years later. I had an endorsement deal with Guess. My posters were in every store, every Adidas store in 15 different countries. I was making an ad for Head and Shoulders shampoo, and my ads were running in multiple languages across different countries. I started doing philanthropy because I was really inspired by We Are the World and Band-Aid, all those sort of 80s, 90s charity events. And we started helping kids, like orphan kids in Russia. And you know who came to my event? Michael Jackson, in person, came to my event. Moved to the States, and you sort of learn from, if you dare greatly, if you aim high, sometimes you actually achieve it. You just need to aim high and not be afraid. So I started this music production company, music video production company as well in Hollywood when I was in the States. And I had this sort of really interesting business model where I would bring Eastern European artists. I was very connected there, and work in LA. My wife used to work for MTV, VH1. She had all these connections in Hollywood. So I find myself, remember I was writing this, I liked the logo for Kiss because it had that double lightning, at the end. Now I'm recording a Eastern European band in the studio of Kiss, being produced by the producer of Kiss, and I'm hiring one of the guitar players of Kiss to do a solo for me. Okay? That is the power of personal branding. That is the power. That is the leap that you can have. Or you can just put your nose down, do your little thing. Even at a high level, you can be big, very well paid, and have no reputation at scale anywhere. And you can be a great expert and a great professional, but you'll still be a cog in a machine. And the question is, are you okay with that?
Exactly. And so as you were talking through that, I started thinking through my journey in having this podcast. And it's almost 4 years now. We're getting really close to it being 4 years of having this show. Every single week of recording an episode, sometimes with guests, sometimes me just talking through leadership and business and things like that. But whenever I started the podcast, being that introvert, Christian, nobody was listening, just like my mom and a few friends, and that was it. And so, and it was a blow to my ego because I had accomplished these things in my corporate career. And I can go back. I leave all the old episodes up intentionally because I want to be able to show people that come up to me after I'm speaking at an event and say, oh my God, you're such a natural. Like, sort by oldest video and go watch and see. This is 4 years of grinding and doing this over and over and over. And like at first, I can see why. Only 5% of podcasts make it past episode 21 or something like that, because it's a ton of work. Nobody's watching. You're not getting views. You're not getting paid for it. It's just all of this work. And, whenever I look over these past 4 years, Christian, it took me 3.5 years to get to 1,000 followers on YouTube. And in the past 6 months, we've doubled that. And so what you see is this exponential curve that's always floating around the internet of work, 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 work. And then all of a sudden you see the explosion. And the thing that I've come to realize is that this graphic, while very representative of what is possible, it misses out on a key component, and that is how important it is that you capture and understand the power of acceleration before the ramp. Because you can just work into the grave. But if you are intentional about what am I doing, what am I building, what is my why, and you stay true to yourself on a long enough time horizon, you are going to get better. And whenever I look at my episodes now compared to 4 years ago, there is a drastic difference in all things, not just the production quality in the show itself, but the quality of me. And so what I've realized is all that work that I was doing over the years was doing more work on me than I was doing work on the work. It was helping me learn and build and develop skills around effective communication, around being able to capture people's attention and share my message. And this kind of goes back into what you were talking about is it's far too easy for us to feel like, well, there's nothing special about me. Nobody's going to listen to me. Why should I even bother? But here's the thing. Yes, as humans, we all live very different lives, but there is an introverted IT guy that's fresh out of high school or fresh out of college who doesn't know how to communicate, who's petrified to talk to women. And my hope is that I can speak to that person and show him what is possible. And I think it's important that we learn to understand that we all have this power within us to be able to inspire and influence and positively impact people's lives. But it means that you have to step off into that big, massive ocean of fear and know that you're not going to sink, that you might scramble around and you're going to look like an idiot for a while. And that's okay. There's going to be people that are going to be laughing at you, and also okay. But one day, they're not going to be laughing at you.
No, absolutely. You're so right. And it is fear at the end of the day. You know, I just literally, this is the first time I say this because I stole it from last weekend. There was a speaker at a conference I was in, literally I came back from it right now. And he was talking about the why, start with the why, from Simon Sinek, who's famously coined the phrase. And he says, you know what? There's another layer to that start with the why piece. He goes, you know what you need to do to develop your personal brand? You start with the wow. What is the thing? What's the wow in you? That is sort of this, it sort of was trained out of you, right? That makes you you. That when you speak, people pay attention because you care. When you speak, people pay attention because you have done the work, the research, because it's so much wow for you. You know, the wonder that you have drove you to becoming good at this, and we like really shrink from that because of the fear that you just mentioned, right? And I really believe that. Like every expert, it doesn't matter if you're in the corporate world, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in the arts, if you're into sports, if that's your path, that wow is the thing that maybe even drives the why. You know, maybe it's under the why, right? And if you just find that, if you connect to that, and start doing a podcast that only your mom listens to for a while. You know, and you're sort of embarrassed looking back. Oh my gosh, you know. But then you start seeing, whoa. I said something powerful. I said it in a better way than I used to. More people responded and they were moved. And it just slowly builds something special. And then that's that thing, that energy, that speed that you mentioned, right? It starts picking up. And then next thing you know, there's thousands listening, tens of thousands listening to your podcast. I started a newsletter a few years ago, like a couple years ago. and I have like 21,000 subscribers now, and I'm like, it blows my mind, right? It's that kind of thing, but it's sitting and being comfortable in that wow, that maybe this will resonate, and just doing it over and over and over again. That's what most people just lack the courage to do. And what accelerates that is coaching. Like if I can bring it full circle, like every coach that coaches people always has a coach because they know that. They coach because that brings speed. And they have coaches because they want to accelerate as well. They don't want to go slow. They want to go fast, right? And like I've had coaches in all kinds of different areas and still do, and I pay either with money or with time or with other things, but I always have coaches because I want to accelerate.
Man, so I love the way you pulled that around full circle, because that is something that I put off in my life for way, way too long, because I had this mindset, well, growing up without any money, I had this mindset of I need to save all my money and I'll just figure it out and I'll brute force it. And it was only a couple of years ago that I actually started to invest in coaches for myself. And man, just the rate of acceleration and their ability to help remove friction, it just blew my mind. And, interestingly enough, I had somebody that I've had a few coaching sessions with, and I had mentioned that I have coaches. And he reached out to me. He's like, well, this is a little bit confusing. You have coaches? Like, why should I pay you when you have coaches? And I was like, okay,
That's exactly why he has to pay you.
You'll get there. But look, we're all on different stages of our journey. And so my business, WSS, the logo, it's actually 3 bars and they're different colors. And those different colors are intentional because it's representative of as we grow and progress through the seasons of our lives, it will require a different version of us each time we step up. And engaging with a coach, a guide, a mentor, all they're going to do is accelerate that process, but it is an investment in yourself. It's not just a cost. Now, to be fair, there are coaches that are just a cost that you don't learn from. But once you find the right coach or coaches, like go all in and invest everything you can, because they're going to remove friction and help you accelerate to get to that point of exponential growth.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, if you work with a coach, you have to have the mindset that it's going to 10x your fulfillment, your wealth, your effectiveness, your performance, all of it.
Yeah,
like it makes it worth it that way. If you're just trying to get away from pain, don't hire a coach, hire a therapist, right? It's just a different set of skill sets and goals, really. Yeah.
Well, Christian, I want to be respectful of your time. We're closing in on the hour, but I would ask, what is one of the biggest lessons that you have learned in this incredible life of yours that you would like to share with the audience?
I think that my obstacles and my suffering can be rocket fuel for my success. As a matter of fact, most of the time, that's how it works out. So instead of being a victim, you can be a victim. I've been a victim of all kinds of ways. But if you refuse to remain a victim and learn how to repurpose pain into power, that's the lesson, I think.
Jeez. Could not have asked for a better way for us to wrap this up. Thank you. So how do people contact you?
I have a great newsletter that drops every Sunday. ChristianRayFlores.com. You can subscribe. It's free for the new ones. If you want to support the work of the team, you can pay the cost of a latte a month, and you have access to the full archive, free webinars for my subscribers, all kinds of goodies and perks. But that's probably the best way to do it. If you want to look up Exponential.life, exponential without the E, that's the coaching. That's for very serious people who want to do very serious work. I do have a scorecard on the Exponential website that you may enjoy. And it's basically, I use it with all my clients and I give it away for free to anyone who's interested. And you answer maybe 40 questions plus, and you get a very, very clear, distinct picture of where you are, which is the first step to getting where you want to go.
I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will make sure that we have all of Christian's contact information, all of his social media links, his YouTube, his podcast, all these other things down in the show notes below. If you're serious about leveling up and stepping into that exponential life that you are so capable of achieving, do not hesitate to reach out to him. Christian, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, that is all we have for the show today. Thank you so much, and y'all have a good one.